You'd open up National Geographic, and the first 6 pages were erectile dysfunction ads. What does this have to do with anthropology or culture or anything like that? A lot of brands have trouble with that. They don't want to go too woke, but then they can't swing too far the other way. Yeah. And if it's a bigger brand, then that problem is amplified. Our ability to sort of thread that needle, creating high quality stories or films that conveys a message but doesn't piss a lot of people off. And we've discussed whale hunting and polar bear hunting and elephant hunting. I mean, you name it, and we've touched the topic. We've said it in a way where, hey, this is a complicated topic. Here's a bunch of smart people who know way more than us about it. We're just going to present that information.
You have been able to work. You got over 100 brands that have placed confidence in you. How did it start? And then how did you convince these people? Was it the work that did it? You think the quality of the work?
Yes, it's a bit of both. So I think that, before Modern Huntsman, so after I did all the travel and filming for hunting, I got a little burned out. I was gone 10 out of the 12 months of the year and couldn't really have a relationship. So I kind of took a pause from that and got more into working for other magazines and brands, and worked for a lot of different companies and magazines and things like that. So I got a lot of good experience with what people were doing with their brands.
Learning what they want.
I was a creative director for Stetson. I worked with Filson and Cabela's and, things like that. And I feel like I started to see what I thought was working and what wasn't working. And then you'd look at magazines and it would be, perfect example. We all grew up reading National Geographic. And at a certain point, it got to where you'd open up National Geographic and the first 6 pages were erectile dysfunction ads. And you're like, what does this have to do with anthropology or culture or anything like that? And so, maybe it's my background or my personality, I don't know, but I have a sort of a diplomatic,
peacemaker
approach.
Peacemaker.
Yeah. And so I've developed and or cultivated the ability to kind of walk the middle. I'm not really into politics. I don't really affiliate with a political party one way or the other. And am more interested in the common ground. Right. Yeah. So I was always approaching it from that perspective of, well, how can we bring some people together or find some things we can agree on? And so a lot of brands have trouble with that, right? They don't want to go too woke, but then they can't swing too far the other way because they've got different customer demographics. And if it's a bigger brand, then that problem is amplified. And so our ability to sort of thread that needle, right, call it the purple zone, right, between red and blue, creating high quality, ideally inspirational or impactful stories or films or photographs, whatever it is, that conveys a message but doesn't piss a lot of people off is hard to do. And fortunately, so far, haven't been canceled or really much backlash. And we've discussed whale hunting and polar bear hunting and elephant hunting. I mean, you name it, and we've touched the topic. But we've said it in a way where, hey, this is a complicated topic. Here's a bunch of smart people who know way more than us about it. We're just going to present that information. Yeah. And so you decide.
So the audience knows, when they open your magazine, they're not going to see somebody clubbing a bunch of baby seals. But you do get like whale hunting, which were you in Denmark or what did you do?
We've done several. So yes, one of it was on the Faroe Islands. Some of it was Alaskan Islands. We've done another one on the Japanese whaling situation. But I think that, all of those things to say, and those aren't really things that brands want to talk about, right? So that's not what we propose. But in a lot of cases, every brand has their brand, brand voice, their target demographic. They try to stick within those lanes. We can cast a wider net, 15 or 20 degrees in the other direction, because we have a fairly diverse readership, people from different backgrounds. So it allows us to kind of act on behalf of the brand, but reach new people that expands their brand voice in a way, right? Yeah. It doesn't have to come straight down the middle. And we've found success with that, right? And we've also, we don't do traditional ads. So we'll concept what these stories and interviews and recipes and experiences are going to be like over the course of the next year or 2 years, and then plan, hey, we've got this person, this interesting person, or there's this other story if you want to be aligned with something positive, and then strategically work the photos that integrate product into the book, deliver stuff back to them, and then obviously coordinate it through our social media as like a partnership kind of thing. So it's almost more like a creative agency that happens to have a publication. And that's the word synergy again. But yeah, that way it's like we're forming long-term partnerships. We're basically acting like an extension of their creative or marketing team.
Yeah.
And it's being presented in a high level way that has a long shelf life and isn't going to age as much as, the ones you see at the checkout counter.
So effectively, and what it comes across as, the magazine is actually it looks like a coffee table book, right? And it's, if you have a trophy room or a hunting lodge or a barber shop, it is the coolest coffee table. I'm not just throwing shade, because I've put it in giving it to friends, and I know people that buy them, and they put it out, and people really react to it. Mm-hmm. And what I like about it is the guy that's not the hunter, loves it.
Yeah,
and so I think that's. I know you've caught a lot of flack for going after the purple zone, but that's who we gotta. That's if we want to preserve wildlife. We can't preach to the choir, and we have to go after the. We have ballot measures. We got to go after the hard votes to keep hunting alive. And so kudos to you for doing it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I think it's one of those things too, where there's a lot of other organizations focused on new hunter recruitment, right? That's not my thing.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in creating a positive reputation for hunting and call it like a PR campaign, right?
Yeah.
Where we're showcasing the ethical, inspirational, cultural, traditional elements of hunting. And there are some things in the hunting world that I do think are wrong, and we don't need to go into those, but there's a reason. I mean, and I tell people this when they talk about, well, we should be able to do whatever we want, post our trophy photos. Yeah, I agree. However, that's not the world we live in anymore.
Yeah.
And if it's not done correctly, think about it. If you're an animal rights group,
and you see a guy with a bear with a beer in its head and a hat on, and
they don't even have to pay for marketing anymore.
You got National Geographic contributors, so you got a magazine that is like almost a hunting magazine of National Geographic quality, and I feel like that gets into a lot more homes done that way.
Yeah, we've miraculously, Disney bought Nat Geo, and they just took a turn, right? They're focused on different things now, and some of the long form, I would say maybe slightly harder hitting stories, some of which were about wildlife management, and we published David Chancellor's work about he spent 2 years, maybe 3 years documenting the Botswana elephant situation.
Yeah.
And he was a vegetarian non-hunter who was put on that assignment, spending time with these villagers in Botswana, watching them manage the elephant herd. Mm-hmm. And at first, he went in with his predisposition, and he came out of that, and he has he's of the belief that it's the necessary thing to do because of the quality of life for the people there, of the overabundance of the resource being the elephants, of the destruction.
And he was a Nat Geo guy?
Yeah, he's an old, one of the most legendary Nat Geo film photographers. We've now published him 3 times in the magazine. And to watch his change in perspective towards us over the years, because when we first published his work, he was like, hey, this is great. I love the way you presented it, but I'm sorry, but I can't promote this because it has the word hunt in it. And I said, okay, I understood. Let's continue the conversation. And over time, as things have progressed, we were kind of the last bastion of long form print journalism. And we're letting these guys say what they want to say. And that's not the case for a lot of different publications, And now he's actively promoting the work on his channel and saying, this is a publication you should read and you should follow. You're not going to agree with everything. And one of my important points is, and I say this to people when they object to something, you're like, just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
So if you have an emotional reaction or something, or you don't like it, don't just write it off. Just lean in, dig deeper, ask questions, find out. And look, we don't all like the taste of certain things, and that's fine. But at least now you understand what the ingredients are.
Well, so people that haven't seen this, when an elephant is harvested or killed in the bush, and we're talking out in the middle of nowhere, something fascinating happens. You can be in the most remote location, and there's a thing called the bush telegraph, which is like how information spreads through the bush. And it's kind of like the Pony Express on foot. And so once there's a shot, and it's an area where they know people hunt elephants, out of nowhere, people start appearing. And at first it's like Bigfoot in the bush, like people looking off on the side. Can't get it real clear. And then they start coming. And so I've been a part of this a few times. And so it can go one of two ways. You can do it orderly. And you and I were a part of a good one once. So you line up the villagers, and before long, there's 100 or more, 200 people there. And so after you take what the trophy elements away, you line everyone up and you're cutting meat off the elephant and handing it first to the mothers with kids and the elderly, and then just children, and then the men. And this moment for them in the bush, meat is more valuable than money. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, what's a $100 bill going to get you? Nothing. But meat is it sustains their life. And so they are very excited for it. Now, I have seen it when it goes the other way, where you have to stand on top of it with an AK-47, because you get guys that are also selling the meat on the market, and they will fight, and that's illegal. And they will fight and try to get the meat from the hunting company. And so we had to get the trophy elements away, and then we turned it over. And what ensued was madness. There was guys cutting meat, and they would set up a pile. Someone would steal it. A guy gets smart. He puts a burlap sack between his legs. He's filling it up with meat as he's cutting and throwing it. A guy from behind him cuts open the sack and steals his meat. A guy's swinging an axe. In Africa, there's this axe that it's a triangular piece of metal that goes into a stick. And they use it as a shovel when they put the metal in the top and they dig with it, or they use it like an axe and they put it in the side. But the back of it has the point. And so this guy's chopping meat, and the guy behind him gets hit in the head with the axe, and blood starts pouring down his head. And the guy, he doesn't want to stop getting meat. And so he found the solution was he took a piece of elephant dung and stuffed it right on the wound and kept at it. So, but nonetheless, that resource to them, the meat, is tremendous. And so what people don't realize is that across most, especially non-urban sub-Saharan Africa, that hunting is very well received and a necessary part of their life. And the animals, they get an economic value when there's hunting. So they're paid to protect them, and they get meat. Now, if the animals don't have an economic value and there's no hunting, what happens is those people need to live, right? So they will kill the animals. And so this is how it's preserved. And I don't know how many safaris you've been on, did you find that most of the people in the bush received you well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of the people who worked for the companies often were from those communities, because there's no other work opportunity other than maybe farming, and farming in the bush is pretty difficult, especially in areas with in areas with elephants. And I think that in the best case scenarios, right, the best examples are when the community then feels like they're part of it or empowered, right? And they now view that resource as part of a way for their well-being and their quality of life to progress. And I've seen the opposite of that, right? Where they had poaching problems and things like that. But I think that ultimately almost nothing in Africa will be successful if the community doesn't support it or buy in. And so there's got to be a partnership element to that, right? Yeah. And I think the best examples of that are when that partnership is strong, and when the family, or I'm sorry, when the community is working. And the best trackers are the ones who were the poachers. And then they say, hey, instead of you get arrested, come work for us. Yeah. Tell us where these other poachers are. And they get paid, they get meat, their family does well,
elephants are safe.
They've got job security. It's a win-win, but it's still Africa, right? And anything can happen, and other people can come in from other areas. But yeah, I mean, I think that was always in times where I wasn't able to justify it myself, seeing, like you said, the community coming out and getting meat and basically having a party. And I remember them hugging you, being super excited. And we did a whole Africa issue actually in 2020 where we basically gave the microphone to a lot of different, a wide range of Africans, right? Villagers, Black Africans, white Africans, safari companies, and like a recurring theme is, why does the Western civilized, world get to tell us what to do with our wildlife resources?
Okay.
And I think that's a really interesting question. And often that's what the response was when people are like, well, we don't think you as villagers or a country in Botswana should be able to shoot elephants. And they would say, okay, have you ever lived with one?
Yeah.
Have you ever had your children nearly stomped to death on their way to school? Or
your husband, I've met several people who had family members like, what do you do when your husband gets stomped by an elephant?
Yeah, or your
farm's destroyed.
Exactly, and that's your entire livelihood, and you don't have the money to buy crops or replant.
Yeah,
rain is difficult.
That's not your problem in San Francisco. You're not living with that. And I heard the same thing on lions. I thought it was so fascinating. I had a conversation with a guy that said, how is it? Because a lion to them is terror, frightening, and it kills people, kills their livestock. And they're like, why would they want us to live with these beasts?
Right.
And so they hated the lion hunting, but to the locals, what they don't realize is the locals, what they do, they have to protect their life. They'll poison every one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey man, what motivates you? Because I know you dug that you've done that magazine in your career out of the ground. I mean, like that, you were digging deep to get that.
Yeah.
And I know you've had it for 7 years, and now it's doing really well. But what motivated you? What continues to motivate you?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I when we caught up the other day, I told you in this issue in particular, I sort of rewrote our mission statement. And I read a quote from Edith Wharton, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning author in, I think, the 20s, maybe 1930s. And basically she said, there's two ways to be the light. You can either be the candle or the mirror that reflects it. And I had to really try, as we, do new campaigns and put stuff on the website, try to figure out more and more how to distill things. And I think ultimately that's kind of what it's about to me, is discovering and sharing inspiring stories, people, conservation wins, things like that. And when I care about something, I'm highly motivated to protect it. And so I've seen some incredible places, met some amazing people, obviously have become very enamored with wildlife all over the world. And I feel like what we're doing, no one else is doing what we're doing, at least at the scale. And so I definitely have a sense of duty and motivation there to continue to do this and give or take the percentage numbers, right? But let's say 80 to 85% of the global population doesn't hunt, right? So that's more of who we're trying to access and tell these stories like the ones we've been on or other ones I've experienced. But I just think that there's been so many situations in particularly the last 3 or 4 years, as we've started to host experiences in Scotland and Africa and Montana and Texas and things like that, where either hunters who have spent their life hunting, but in a very specific way, are now being exposed to a different style or a different culture, or there's people who have never been a part of it, and we're providing an on-ramp to them. to just come be observers.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they're like, wow, I had no idea the level of, commitment and research and dedication that went into managing those deer or those buffalo or whatever it is. And I think that especially with food, right? With wild food, and that's been a major way for us to accomplish the goals, right? Is
everyone likes to eat.
Yeah. And so we have these wild food dinners where we did one in Dallas back in June, and it was a chef friend of mine who was born in a Thailand refugee camp because his father fought for the U.S. in the secret war during the Vietnam War. And then they immigrated to Minneapolis, and he's Hmong. So the Hmong people are these mountain people that are very industrious and amazing farmers. And when he grew up, they didn't have table or any utensils, so they used banana leaves on the ground as their table. So now he's won a James Beard Award. He's got one of the top 100 restaurants in the world in Minneapolis called Vinay, which is the name of the refugee camp he was born in Thailand. And so we did this dinner where all the tables were covered in banana leaves and all the food was just put on that.
Oh, wild game and stuff?
So fish, and we did, there was venison and hog and some other stuff. And then he did one that he calls the Hill Tribe chicken. So there was one chicken dish, but everything else was wild game. And so this dinner, the idea was that maybe 25% of the people there were actually hunters. Everybody else came because they know who this chef is or they wanted to try this food. I did a little talk about Modern Huntsman. We showed a film that we had done. And then Yia told the story about his family. And he's a big hunter. He loves hunting invasive game. He shoots iguanas all the time and like slow braces iguanas.
Well, he's a better messenger than us, maybe. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is like curating those people and those voices and those stories that now allow maybe Dallas urbanites who they were hunting adjacent, like they have a cousin or a brother, an aunt who goes hunting, but they were never really interested. So now they've come to this dinner hosted by a hunting company, essentially, met someone, ate maybe some food they'd never tried before. And they're like, oh, well, you know what? Maybe I want to try this. Maybe I'll come to the next one, or maybe I'll come to Scotland, or whatever it is, right? And that started to steamroll, however you say that, snowball. And that's been very inspiring.
Yeah, it's one thing, people that grew up around hunting, and then you're trying to introduce someone that's from the same community. But when you're convincing refined people and the intellectual class and real successful people, you got to take a different approach. And I think that's a really good way to do it. And besides the benefit it does for preserving the heritage, is that people that get involved in hunting and retrieving their own food, they love it.
Yeah.
So you're giving that adds to your quality of life, and then they take their kids. So that's a beautiful way to transfer the enthusiasm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially we saw a big uptick during COVID when a lot of people went to the grocery store and there was no meat there. And they were like, oh shit, maybe I'm not self-sufficient. And so we saw a lot of interest in that, people wanting to take responsibility for
feeding their family,
sourcing their own food. And then one step beyond that, having a connection to it, knowing the rancher, knowing the farmer, knowing where that deer, watching the deer, scouting, learning the ecology and the patterns of that wildlife. And then the hunter's paradox, right? Killing something you love, but now there's meaning to it. And okay, well now I need to maybe put a little bit more effort into cooking this meal than I normally would because I care. You want to do the animal honor, right? You want to and show respect towards it, and I there's something really beautiful about that to me. And it doesn't mean you always have to do that, right? I mean, sometimes you're just going to make venison burgers, but that's fine. But for the people who maybe want to try something different, we have a lot of resources, a lot of recipes, and we have a cookbook that releases pretty soon here. So
very cool. Hey, well, what's next for you, man? What's coming up with the work? I know you're traveling now. Where are you traveling? Your next travel's taking you? Yeah,
so I get on a plane today to go back to Montana we have our cookbook launches on Wednesday on the official launch date September 2nd. So we've been working on this for 3 years with Penguin Random House. Normally we publish everything ourselves, but we decided to take a check and try a mass distribution deal. Going to Scotland, this will be our 5th year in a row hosting the Scotland trip, where
it's hunting on a state or
week long hunting trip in the Highlands, traditional deer stalking, red grouse, salmon and trout fishing. We have some whiskey partners that come in. And so a lot of it is also about, just the amazing traditions of Scottish deer stalking, right? Some of that storytelling, mushroom foraging, all kinds of stuff like that. We're participating in the New York Food and Wine Festival with our cookbook. So my chef friend who's Danish, but he lives in Italy, is coming over and cooking a wild game meal in this master class, which, as far as I know, is the only wild game focused class during the New York Food and Wine Festival, which will be cool. And then, we host another, it's sort of an elk hunting experience in Colorado where there's 3 cow elk hunters, and then people who want to go on that. And depending on how the rut goes, bulls may or may not be calling, but they get close to wildlife. They get to experience a hunt. We teach them field dressing. There's a master butcher who comes and talks about how to break animals down. Then we cook an open fire dinner and do sporting clays and long distance shooting, and in a beautiful ranch and lodge. So there's, an element of, and we have a wide range. Not everything is fancy. Some of it's more rustic, and it's just, we kind of communicate that ahead of time. Like, what's the kind of experience you're looking for? Some people want to go suffer, right? Yeah. And you can do that if you want to pay money. There's really, really hard stuff you can do. But we're trying to find a balance between, you and I've been in a lot of hunting camps where it's a bunch of guys sitting around talking about stuff they've shot. Yeah. And over time, that just loses its appeal. And if they brought their wife or they brought their daughter or they brought their cousin, there just needs to be maybe a slightly wider curriculum or variety of things to do or talk about. So we're trying to provide these experiences where people can come from different backgrounds. It's still a hunting experience. It's a hunt. But we've got, maybe there's an artist there and there's a chef, and then maybe there's a naturalist, or we've got Swarovski Optic, our strong partner there, to take people on nature walks and identify birds and learn about that kind of thing. That's all. We're going to be doing a lot more of those next year. And,
are they all over the world?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the idea is that we lean back into the relationships that, some of the ones you and I developed, right? Yeah. Some of the best outfitters around the world that we feel like represent what we're trying to do and that understand that approach, but at the same time are interested in diversifying their client base, right? There are some people, I mean, I'm sure you've seen it in the hunting industry, especially in Africa, they'll do hunting and photographic safaris, but they don't tell the photographic clients that they do the hunting safaris, right? Because they don't want to upset them.
The ugly sister.
So we're trying to find the opportunities and the situations where we can actively talk about that and talk about how the hunting operations subsidize the photographic. And one of the stories in that Africa issue was about the environmental impact of hunting safaris versus photographic. You go into the Serengeti, there's 500 vehicles, and they're paying $100, $200 a day versus one hunting vehicle paying $2,000 a day in an area the size of the Serengeti. Like, what? Yeah. Let's talk about impact, and so those types of things where I don't want to say challenging conversations, but kind of, right? Yeah. We're trying to foster those conversations in a constructive way, and then offer an experience that maybe isn't out there right now, right? Yeah. Where you can go get close to wildlife. And we did that last year in Colorado, where we called in all these bull elk. No one had a gun, just cameras and binos, having bull elk screaming.
So intense.
From 15 yards away. And the guides were learning photo skills from the photographers, and the photographers were learning how to get closer to these animals and understand their behavior and stuff. And we were like, that's easily repeatable. You don't have to buy tags. Yeah. Do all the processing. And
so you got all these photographers that went and bought a bugle, and now they're going to be trying to call them in.
I don't know if they'll go that far, but in that case, it would more be that they just call the guide and be like, hey, can we go do that again? Yeah. And the guide's getting good photos that he's now going to show to his hunters and say, look at this bull that we just called in or whatever. But it's just one of those things where, you could do that in Africa. You could do that in Alaska with moose or bear, things like that. And for the outfitter, it's like it's providing more revenue opportunity because you're not you're not taking that resource right away. And you're doing that maybe in the off season when you're not bow hunting or you're not rifle hunting. So yeah, just things like that, right? Trying to mix it up a little bit and combine those things in a way that just allow more people to be part of it.
Yeah, right on, man. Oh, hey, and congratulations on the engagement. I have to tell
thank
you that.
you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And I really appreciate coming. Always glad to see you. Glad to connect with you again. And onward, my soldier. I know you've been kicking a lot of ass.
Thanks, man.
And you really are a badass. And it's interesting that you have been able to bring your art to life. And I encourage everyone to look at your pictures because they are the most amazing. We didn't even get into what kind of photography and the quality of writing. And so read some of Tyler's work. Look at his pictures, enjoy it. Tyler, thanks for coming in.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, man. Yeah,
thanks.